极乐界
Elysium World 街坊 The 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world is part of the positive universe. From the perspective of the materials, they are the objective existence. They can be seen and touched. All the objects in them have life longevity. The Elysium world is part of the negative world and everything there is fantasy. In the Elysium world, time almost disappears. All the objects exist by nature instead of by the form. Sometimes they, based on their needs, can change into a certain form temporarily. But when they exist by nature, they are eternal. The Elysium world is the Western Elysium world in Buddhism. They are also called the Buddha land and Buddha state. Where is the Elysium world? Just lies in the Earth universe. Then how big is it? It has the same size as the Earth universe, including the micro-universe and macro-universe. We can understand that the Elysium universe is located millions of billions of light years away. And everything around us, including ourselves, is also in the Elysium world. As far as the dream is concerned, the space in the dream is the negative space. So what's the size of the dream of each person? No one can answer this question because the size of the dream world is determined on the dreamer's perception, experience, the degree of spiritual nature, and the thinking ability. The more perception and experience we have, the purer our spiritual nature, and the more capable our thinking is, the large size our dream world will have. Some people can see the Buddha, God, sun, and rainbow in their dreams. Some people can fly on the clouds, the 1,000-year world or the 10,000-year world with colors in their dreams. These dreams mean they have very pure spiritual nature. However, some people can never have such dreams in their life. The scenes in the dreams of some people are the same as the real human society because they have low thinking ability. Some people can solve the problems in their dreams that can never be resolved in the reality because they have deeper perception and experience. The Elysium is similar to the dream worlds because they are all the negative spaces. Whether or not we can perceive it and enter it, and how deep we can enter it depend on ourselves. To enter the dream, we rely on our perception, experience, and spiritual nature degree and thinking ability. To enter the Elysium world, we rely on our Buddhist nature, without which we can never do it. Most of the things imagined in our brains are true realities because the human brain is part of the universe. They are the reflections of the universe, just like any cell and blood in the human body can reflect his entire look. The human brains can not only reflect the positive space, but also the negative space. From the perspective of the negative space, the humans cannot imagine the whole look of the universe even if their imagination is extremely rich and vast. Now let's come to the Elysium world. Everything of the Earth universe belongs to the Elysium world. Then can we see the Earth where we live in the Elysium world? My answer is yes and no at the same time. We can because the Earth does exist in the Elysium world. We cannot because the Earth we see from the perspective of the Elysium world is different from what we humans know about the Earth. So can we see the Earth people from the Elysium world? The answer is also yes and no at the same time. We can because of the existence of human beings. We cannot because the people in the Elysium world do not have our looks and appearances. For example, what can we see in the dark night? We can see nothing except the luminous bodies. But does it mean nothing exists in the dark night simply because we cannot see them? No, they do exist. We can't see them because we do not have the ability to see them at night. We can only see the fireflies shining in the night, but we cannot see their entire bodies. Can we say the fireflies have no heads or wings because we can't see them? Definitely not. We can't see the running rats in the field in the dark night. But the owls can. Does it mean the owls have special functions?
No.
That's because the eyes of the owls have different retina structure from that of the humans. The eyes of many animals look the same as ours. But at night their eyes are shining green. In special circumstances, the objects have special expression forms. In the polar nights and polar light, the human eyes can see nothing. But it doesn't mean nothing exists there. In the Elysium world, the existence form of the Earth and the human beings are different from our realities. In reality, we don't see much difference between the humans. But seen from the Elysium world, the difference between humans is great. Some people almost have no form. Some people show up as a column of dim light. Some people appear as a column of red light. Some people show up in red colors with different height of light columns because the people have different mass or nature. The mass is a spiritual nature which is formed at birth and consolidated in the enduring and persistent belief, or the so-called self-refinery and self-improvement. The long-time self-improvement can change the people's mass. The enduring self-deterioration can also change the people's mass. The existence form of life is various and weird. In each person's bedroom there are hundreds of millions of lives invisible to us. In the surrounding space, there are thousands of flowing rivers and millions of celestial bodies. Each stone records the time lapse of thousands of years that we can't see. Our brain waves keep emitting the information waves about the health and inner world which we cannot see either. The ghosts we often talk about are actually the life between the yin and yang worlds which we cannot see either. The scenes in each one's dream is also invisible to us except the dreamers and people in the dream. Seen from the Elysium World, there is life everywhere in the universe. There is life not only on all the planets but also in the empty space. The life is not only on the land but also under the land. The life is not only in the air but also in the vacuum. There is life not only in the warm places but also in cold weather. There is life on the sun, in the stone, on the light rays, and in the radio waves. The life is everywhere and within life. The Buddha land is remote at the universe end. The Buddha land is near in front of us. To enter the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world, we need time and have to pass the space tunnel. To enter the Elysium world, we can get there in an instant and become the Buddha very shortly. Because the density and mass in different zones, in the universe and space are different, the 3,000 worlds have been formed. These 3,000 worlds, based on their distance and mutual dependence, are divided into 10 continents, namely Lotus Continent, Borneo Continent, Kasayapa Continent, Ingu Continent, Amida Buddha Continent, Celestial Islands Continent, the continent for 3 realms lives to pass through, Moon Temple Continent, God's Continent, and Supreme Authentic Wisdom Continent. It is impossible to describe in detail the 3,000 worlds and 10 continents. Till now, human beings have been living for thousands of years. Today the science has development nanometer and cloning technologies, but it still can't describe the life body of humans, let alone the vast Elysium world. What I can show you is just an outline. The universe. The Earth universe. Where we live is just a particulate in the large universe. To pass the space tunnel we have to walk through the particulate. It will take us 1,860 years, about 5.85 billion and 57 million light years. The particulate is an organic integrity revolving around the heaven world. We call this revolving body as the law rotary system, which has over 3,000 rotary river world, the large worlds. Each rotary river world has almost 3,000 Milky Way systems, the middle worlds. In each Milky Way system, there are almost 3,000 solar systems, small worlds. Please note that the so-called system is a relatively independent celestial clan. It is not that one sun-like star constitutes a solar system. In some zones several hundred suns form a solar system. In some solar systems there are several thousand stars or even tens of thousands of stars. The Earth is just a member of the solar system of the small worlds, not efficient to constitute a world. From the angle of the Buddha land, we divide the 3,000 large worlds into 10 continents, namely the 10 Buddha states. Such division is not even division of the Earth universe, or based on the number of planets and galaxies. Instead, they are divided according to the features and mass of life, or the level of Buddhism. The Buddha, in common sense, is just a general concept. As a matter of fact, the Buddha has 10 levels of powers. Each level constitutes a continent. There are strict regulations in the 10 continents prohibiting the Buddha from going from one continent to another, just like the Monkey King draws a circle for Monktang with his Monkey King bar. But we don't have the power to enter that circle. Before coming to the mortal world, Sakyamuni used to live in the Lotus continent. Later he passed the continent for 3 realms lives to pass through to enter the mortal world. After fulfilling his mission in the mortal world, he was then upgraded to the God's continent. The senior monks in the Buddhism after dying will go to the Lotus continent. Hereby I will explain the 10 continents from the high level to the low level. The lowest level is the Lotus continent and the highest level is the Supreme Authentic Wisdom continent. Lotus continent in the eyes of the mortal people. The Lotus continent is an empty world in which there is nothing. In the eyes of the people living in the 1,000-year world, the Lotus continent is a vast esirara. In the eyes of the celestial beings living in the 10,000-year world, the Lotus world is a vast world of lotus blossoming on the sea. In the eyes of Buddha, numerous Buddha are sitting on the lotus blossoming. The head of each Buddha is surrounded by a light circle of about 1 meter in diameter, which is called the Buddha light. So the Lotus continent is a world emitting the green Buddha light. Borneo continent. At first view, the Borneo continent is a world of emptiness. Another look, it is a vast plain. Look one more time, it is a world of hills with the same height. On the fourth look, these hills keep changing the forms. They are like the 6-month-old babies playing the small colorful balls, the coiling dragons, the crouching tigers, the young pine trees swinging in the breeze, or the eagles about to fly into the sky. On the fifth observation, we can see the Buddha sitting in meditation, eyes closed, emitting the blue light from their heads. It is a world of the blue Buddha light. Kasayapa continent, it is the hometown to the Kasayapa Buddha with stretching mountains and ridges. Each cluster of mountains circles to form an elegant residence. The pavilions and buildings hide in the trees and orchards. The herds of birds fly in the sky. The rabbits and roe deer run on the fields and in the mountains. The streams flow on the plains with delicate bridges on them. The children play in the yards. The women pick up grapes and pears under the grape trellis or in the orchards. Some of the men eat watermelon in the field. Some play chess in the pavilions or buildings surrounded by bamboos. Some drink wine or tea. Some read poems or play musical instruments, etc. It seems that it is someplace in the mortal world. Actually, all these scenes come from illusion. If you keep looking, you will find the flying birds will alight on the trees and become leaves or fruits. The playing kids will become the blossoming flowers. The chasing animals will become the stones with various forms. The bridges on the rivers will suddenly become the trees. The rivers will become the clouds and mists. The smiling women and men who are playing chess, drinking, reading poems, or playing musical instruments will disappear, and the pavilions and buildings will become hills. All of these are the incarnations of Buddha. Ingwu continent on the first look. Ingwu continent looks like a rolling air mass, which later grows into a round ball with rough surface. The ball keeps expanding and enlarging. The rough surface gradually forms the mountains, rivers, and lakes. You can see all the animals, plants, and nature on the earth and in the 1,000-year world, 10,000-year world. On the clouds, you can see the temples rising with soft celestial music and bell sounds. Accompanied by the celestial music and bell sounds, the plants, animals, humans, celestial beings, and birds gradually rise and change into the forms of Buddhist monks and nuns flying to their temples. In these temples, the burning incense produces smoke and Buddhist masters give the Buddhism lectures. After the lectures are over, the Buddhist monks and nuns return to the ground and are transformed back to their original forms. The temples in the air disappear slowly. The land contracts and becomes a round ball, which later becomes a rolling air mass. Amida Buddha continent seen from the distance. At the end of the horizon there is a bright spot. The circles of colorful halo expand from the bright spot. As we approach nearer, we can find it is a crystal-like transparent planet bigger than the Earth. Through the halo we can find a splendid palace in the center of the planet. In the middle of the palace a Buddha who is sitting is Amida Buddha. His body emits the colorful halo like the water ripples, which always runs through the palace, the transparent planet, and gets into the vast universe. The halo even reaches the earth where the humans live, protects and cleanses the life of those with Buddha nature. When people say Amida Buddha and repent, the frequency of the Buddha light complies with that of the human mind. These people can get the protection from the Buddha. This is the so-called Buddha shines everywhere. Celestial Islands continent. Seen from 10,000 light-years away, there is a disk composed of the mist and dust moving slowly. The diameter of the disk is about 300,000 light-years. The mists are the flowing heaven river and the dusts are the planets in the heaven river. These planets have the similar size with the Earth. They float in the heaven river just like the sea islands. The total number of these planets is 80 billion, on 30 billion of which live one Buddha, or the celestial being. That's why it is called the Celestial Islands continent. On the Celestial Islands continent, there are 80 billion islands and each has a name. The Buddha living on these islands have their own names too. Apart from the 30 billion islands resided by the celestial beings, the other 50 billion islands are still yet to be resided, waiting for the people upgraded into the Buddha from the mortal world, 1,000-year world and 10,000-year world. Now let's have a look at the Snow Peak Island. On this island there is a peak with 10 levels. The first level is in the amber color. The second level is in the green color. The third level is in gold. Level 4 to level 10 is in light blue, gray, milk white, purple, red, black and snow white respectively. Because the top level is shining in snow white, it is called the Snow Peak Mount. On the Snow Peak Island lives a fairy, Buddha, called Yu. One day she succeeded in practicing a fantastic spell and invited some celestial beings to appreciate it. We know that this island is nothing special except the Snow Peak. On the vast, empty and dry land, there is no animal, plant or human. It is a lonely island producing nothing but loneliness. Then this day a common stone at the foot of the snow peak moved a little bit and changed into an extremely charming lady, who was Yui celestial being, the owner of the Snow Peak Island. She stood up straight and then sat down with her legs crossed. The illuminating fireballs flew from her head and into the sky. We followed one of these fireballs and saw it flying across the vast heaven river and sea and reaching the Coral Castle Island. It got into the brain of a dolphin which was resting on the beach. The dolphin swung a little bit and changed into a handsome young man, who was called Dolphin Celestial Body, the owner of the Coral Castle Island. He touched her head, smiled and waved to the sea. Then the waves became violent and a flying horse with wings flew from the waves. Dolphin Celestial Being got on the horse and flew towards the Snow Peak Island. On his way, he met the Green Island Flute Buddha riding on a black cow, the Flower Fairy sitting on a lotus from the Flowers Island, the Crane Celestial Being riding on a crane from the Thousand Birds Island, the White Man Buddha riding on a 9-head beast from the 10,000 Beasts Island, and the Gold Wheel Celestial Being riding on the Fire Wind Wheel from the Fire and Wind Island, who were also on their journey to the Snow Peak Island. When they were about to reach the island, they saw thousands of celestial beings in the sky. Some of them were riding the fish, some on the peacock, some on a penholder, some on a blanket, some on a dog sledge, some on a big leaf, some on the arch bridge made of hundreds of birds, some on the clouds, some on tornado, and some on comet with tails. When reaching the Snow Peak Island, they all descended to the ground and their transport became the colorful cloth on their bodies or walking sticks in their hands. These Buddha and celestial beings have weird appearances. Some are dwarfs, some are tall and strong, some are handsome, some are ugly, some have cold eyes, some have long ears stretching to the shoulders, some have the face of kids but white hair, some have beards touching the ground, some have 3 eyes, some have 18 hands, some have bald heads, and some talk like 6-year-old kids. But the lady celestial beings are pretty and fascinating. On the empty land of the island, there were thousands of celestial beings saying hello to each other. Then all of them turned to Yu celestial being to congratulate her on another spell. When everybody was talking happily, a thunder-like voice came from the crowd. "Sister Yu, we are all your guests. Do the guests have to stand on the wild field like this?" The celestial beings traced the voice and saw a celestial being waving to Yui. He was more than 2 meters tall with rough black hair, red face and large head. He was the red-faced Buddha, the owner of Black Canyon Island. Yui smiled and said, "Please." She spread her long right sleeve in the air, and there appeared a palace made of red bricks and green tiles in front of them. In the palace there were many buildings and pavilions connected by dozens of meters of corridors. The celestial beings were amazed and voiced their admiration. Then Yui celestial being spread her left sleeve into the sky and said, "Please." Suddenly more than 1,000 kinds of grass, plants and trees such as the bamboo, pear trees, willows, pine trees, berry trees and redwood grow beside the pavilions and buildings and on the wild fields in the palace. The trees and plants swing in the breeze and give out fragrance. The fruit hangs on the trees. The celestial beings cheered again for the wonder. Then a skinny celestial being with only one eye on the forehead said, "Sister Yui, what do you plan to place in the open space?" Yui giggled and gave a wave into the air with her two hands. There appeared a pond in the space. In the middle of the pond there was an artificial hill with water rushing out of the top. The fragrant lotus, swimming swans and mandarin ducks, the jumping goldfish and frogs made scene attractive. Another round of cheers came. Then a barefoot Buddha with big belly and mouth said loudly, "Sister Yu, your spells are excellent. But would you like to serve us something to eat because we have traveled far to your island?" When saying this, he touched his big belly protruding out of his clothes. The other celestial beings also agreed with him and looked at Yui's celestial being. Yui gave another smile and jumped on the cloud 10 meters above the ground. She extended her right hand with 5 fingers stretched and pointed to the peach tree beside her. The peaches in the tree were all absorbed into her hands. She closed her hands, threw out the peaches suddenly and said, "Please have a look." The peaches rolled into the crowd and grew larger, turning the delicate and old-fashioned square table and backrest chairs. The celestial beings took their seats happily. Then Yui said loudly, "Attention please." She blew a mouth of celestial mist covering a pear tree. Moments later, the mist disappeared and the pears began to drop onto the ground, turning into the pretty fairies in colorful silk cloth. Holding fruit plates with strange fruit in their hands, the fairies came to the tables and settled the fruit plates, saying to the celestial beings gently, "Please." Then they turned and stood behind the celestial beings. Before the celestial beings ate the fruit, Yu said loudly for another time, "Please look." She bowed to the pond and clapped her hands. The frogs in the ponds jumped out and turned into the handsome young men in black, holding the long-mouthed kettle made of the glazed pagoda and amber luminous cups. These young men walked to the tables and poured the wine in the kettle into the luminous cups. The wine shines in the cups with fragrance. The celestial beings admired. "This is the most fragrant wine I have ever smelled, excellent. Or my heart is drunk." Yui, holding one cup in her hand, said, "It is my great honor to have your presence on my island. The wine is specially prepared for my distinguished guests. Cheers." The celestial beings were about to drink when they saw the spiritual light ripples in the cup. At the bottom of the cups something special appeared. Some cups had the swimming goldfish. Some had the little dragon flying. Some had small tortoise moving. Some had seahorse running. Some had starless fish moving. Some had pearl shining. Almost all the sea fish and animals could be seen in the cups. The celestial beings understood that these are the miraculous drug given by Yui. The celestial beings laughed or said thanks to you. They raised their cups and drank the wine. The waiters filled their cups again and the celestial beings drank for another round of cheers. When they were enjoying themselves, a celestial being said loudly, "Yu, we know your spells have almost reached the peak. But can you show something more to us?" The celestial beings followed the voice and saw 8 elderly celestial beings sitting under the grape trees. One of them was a kindly-looking and bald-headed one with long white hair and dragon-head stick. He waved hands to the celestial beings. He was the highly respected empty Buddha from the Infinitude Island in the Elysium World. Out of respect, the celestial beings put down their cups and became quiet. A kid celestial being asked the eagle-nosed celestial being beside him, "You don't know him because you have just come from the 10,000-year world after self-refinery. He is most of the most competent celestial beings in the Celestial Islands continent. His has multiple and wonderful spells. In his eyes, the spells of Yui are just the games of the kids. Keep quiet and let's see. Yui celestial being with her hands together, bowed to the empty celestial being and said, Master Empty, hope you can enjoy my trivial spells. She then shouted to the pond, Kids, it's time for you to give the dance. Suddenly, the ducks in the pond jumped to the air and became musicians. Some played pipa, some played flute, some played bamboo flute, some played violin, some played drum, and some played hammer. At the same time, the swans in the pond also flew to the cloud and turned into the pretty fairies. In a short moment, the fascinating music began to echo in the air. The fairies began to dance and show their youthful energy and sexy posture. The celestial beings laughed happily. The performance lasted for about 1 hour. Then the fairies and players went back to the pond in the form of swans and ducks.